On July 21st, 2018, at 7:30 a.m., Loudoun County Sheriffs received a 911 call referencing a body on the side of the road in Northern Virginia. The victim was identified as Nancy Moreno. She was taken to hospital and then pronounced dead at 1 p.m. I have the full case file. This is the devious story of Michel Moreno. Firstly, who was Nancy? This is one of only two known photographs of her. She was 54 at the time of death. She was from Washington, D.C., and as a hobby, she worked with a lot of shelters in Northern Virginia. Now, at the time of the incident, the police checked the CCTV cameras and saw the vehicle that struck Nancy, and it came back registered to a Michel Moreno, who at the time was around 58. See, Michel used to be in the military, and this is his military discharge sheet. But first, we need to look into his mother, Ana Enegal de la Garda. This is her will, and in this will, she says, firstly, she would like all her debts to be paid, and then her estate to be granted to Nancy. The will also goes on to say that Michel has the right to remain in the house, and if they decide to sell the house, Nancy gets half, and the remaining is shared between the remaining siblings. So Nancy got the biggest piece of the pie. To look further down the riddle, here are some Facebook messages sent out by Michel to his friends. Here is correspondence between Michel and a friend named Matt. On the 8th of April, Michel seems to need to talk to Matt urgently, and the last correspondence at the top he says, "But now with my sister, I am unable to do anything." This kind of talk does suggest a little animosity towards Michel's sister. In further text messages between Michel and a friend named Brian, Michel says on the 28th of June, "I can't even breathe, much less think about things like that. You don't get it." And then he goes on to say, "Mum was paralyzed by the Ativan, then choked to death." Well, he is referring to the death of his mother in March 2018. But the death is the reason for this crime. Now, before I go back to the actual incident and what happened to Nancy, here are text messages between Nancy and Michel. On the 6th of March, he messages her saying she's expected to die. He's referring to his mother. The next message, he asks Nancy, "Do you want her to die or do you want her to live?" And then says, "Going the way I can help, she is expected to live." So you can see he's acting weirdly toward Nancy. Here are more messages. On the 10th of March 2018, he says, "You're the reason Mum wants to die." Then at 9:56, he says, "Stop trying to kill Mum, I'm begging you." On the 9th of April, he messages her saying, "You killed Mum for nothing." Same day, he says, "I think you killed Mum just to get to me." As the conversation continues, he tells his sister, "You're a ruthless killer." On the 13th of April, he says, "You got your title loan and now you can die in your car. You stole Mom's life. You stole from me once and now you have no remorse." So there is a personal vendetta he has against Nancy, and the case file did not confirm if any of his allegations of her stealing money or wanting her mother to die is true. Either way, on July 21st, Michel agreed to take his sister to the airport as she had a business meeting to attend. At the time, Nancy worked for the Federal Trade Commission. Now, just before the exit, he parked his car and Nancy got out. Now, you don't park your car on a highway unless you have a problem. And my guess would be is they got into some kind of argument, she couldn't take it and she just said, "Let me get out." So he parks. So as she gets out, he waits for her to keep walking forward. She keeps walking and then he slams the accelerator in the car and runs into her back. He then went home. He took some items of Nancy and then he went to the casino in Baltimore. This is when the police ran the CCTV footage. They trace the car, and the image you're seeing is of the car parked at the casino, and you see the dent at the front. This is where he made impact with Nancy. To summarize the story, Michael believed the doctors and Nancy worked together to kill his mother. His mother was being treated for cancer, and he believed the drug Ativan, which the doctors used and Nancy approved of, was them deliberately trying to end his mother's life. According to a police report, Michael believed using home remedies was a better option. I also found a newspaper article which gave more details. Let me read some key parts of it to you. Moreno's older brother Felix Moreno said that he had been distant from Michael for the past 3 decades because he found his brother to be very easy to manipulate and his mannerisms odd, and because he couldn't understand or associate with Michael like he could with a normal person. Felix went on to say, "It got increasingly more uncomfortable over time. I spent as little time as I could communicating with him." Felix also noted that his brother had been involved in a car accident about 25 years ago in which he was airlifted to a hospital to treat his head injuries, an accident that a clinical psychiatrist at the University of Virginia examined Moreno while he was in jail. This psychiatrist said most likely caused Moreno's neurocognitive disorders. The psychiatrist said that when he evaluated Moreno through a series of 8 tests, Moreno showed symptoms of neurocognitive and psychiatric disorders. He said Moreno exhibited problems with social perception that caused him to have real trouble discerning what was meant by someone's tone, and to misread social interactions with peculiar interpretations of what's going on. The psychiatrist also found evidence of an autism spectrum disorder and schizoid personality disorder, which he said could have led to Moreno's imaginable thinking and even paranoia. He noted that chronic stress, perhaps onset by the death of his mother, would have made Moreno's conditions worse to the point where he might have had a disproportionate tendency to be unaware of what he was doing at times. The psychiatrist attributed Moreno's possible dissociation disorder with the story he recounted while on the witness stand, in which Moreno claimed to have been drugged and felt like he was in a nightmare, and had seen a field and swirls outside the car windows when he was driving his sister to the airport. Other witnesses spoke about Nancy and the time they spent with her. One of those was an old friend called Kathleen Burke, who said she knew Nancy for a decade before her death. Burke said that Nancy was a volunteer at her church who loved God, her mother, her friends, and her dog. When Michael and Nancy's sister Marlene Hilton took to the stand, she emphasized with Michael and saying he was in need of help following the death of their mother, and it was Marlene, not Nancy, who was the driving force behind the effort to get Michael help. During the trial, it was frequently mentioned that Nancy was doing all she could to help Michael even further in his life to get it back on track following the death of their mother. Moreno testified that Nancy had helped him land a job at Domino's, took him to food banks, helped him obtain an EBT food card, and helped him apply for Social Security disability. Hilton, who also was rather distant from Michael and Nancy prior to their mother's death, said that she was the only person Moreno talked to after their mom died. While few argued that there were 2 Michael Morenos, one the jury saw in court who broke down multiple times when talking about his mother, and another whom many witnesses testified against. Eventually, Michael Moreno was sentenced to 38 years in prison. So, in conclusion to this story, I think Michael's biggest problem was that he was alone. His siblings never spoke to him. Also, his mother was probably the only person in his life that gave him some kind of self-worth. He may have been weird, and according to the psychiatrist that I told you about, Michael did have some kind of mental issues. His mother probably picked up on this, so his mother probably did all she could to make him feel happy, to make him feel wanted, to make him feel needed. But throughout the case file and the information I have about his life, he didn't have anyone. He didn't have any friends that he could go and hang out with. He didn't have anyone that he could confide in. He didn't have anyone that made him feel like he was wanted or he was needed. And I'm guessing his mother is the only one that made him feel that way. Now, he should be attached to his mother and he should mourn his mother's death. And regardless of how his sisters acted, Michael's pain should be normal as his mother has died. But perhaps Michael thought to himself, well, why does Nancy get everything? I have nothing. And because of the one person in his life that made Michael feel like everything, he didn't know how to process it. He didn't know how to take in the pain. So to let it out, he had to blame someone else for him to get some kind of closure. And that, unfortunately, was Nancy Moreno. Thank you for watching.